Nora's Debugged Destiny, a full-stack revenge byte. The moment I decided to get revenge on my old boss, I was holding a plunger. Not metaphorically, a real plunger. In my hand, in the unisex bathroom of a co-working space that very specifically did not hire me as a developer, but as Facilities Support Associate, which is a fancy way of saying person we call when the dishwasher screams and the toilets rebel. I used to write code that handled six-figure transactions in under a second. Now I was wrestling with a very determined flush. Anyway, I'm plunging, questioning all my life choices when I hear his voice in the hallway. Liam, the man who stole my product idea, threw me under the bus when the first version glitched in front of investors, and then fired me for cultural misalignment. So fast my chair was still warm. "Oh, yeah," he was saying, that smug half-laugh I knew too well. "We pivoted after we let Nora go. Product's finally working without all her drama." My eye twitched so hard I almost unclogged the toilet through pure fury. I froze, plunger midair. Liam's company, my old company, had moved into this co-working space 2 weeks ago. I knew that. I just hadn't expected him to be here, right outside the bathroom while I was wearing a polo shirt with a cartoon mop embroidered over my heart. I held my breath and listened. "We're this close to being acquired," Liam went on. "Once the deal closes, we're out of this place and into a real office. Tech Daily's doing a profile on me next month." On him. On the man whose entire pivot was literally my prototype with the bugs fixed. The toilet finally whooshed like it had been waiting for dramatic timing. I straightened, washed my hands, and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was pulled into a messy bun. My polo was stained with coffee from an earlier incident, and I had a faint outline of exhaustion under my eyes. But my brain was very, very awake. "Oh, Liam," I murmured to my reflection, "you really shouldn't have said the word acquired within hearing distance of the janitor who built your product." That was the moment. Plunger in hand, soap still dripping from my fingers. That was when Move On died and Revenge was born. 3 things you need to know about me. I am not violent. My idea of a serious threat is, I hope your phone dies at 3% with no charger nearby. I am extremely, almost professionally, petty. My grandma used to be an auditor for the IRS, and she raised me on bedtime stories about paper trails and documentation. So, when I say revenge, I don't mean anything dramatic and illegal. I mean spreadsheets. I mean records. I mean consequences with bullet points. Back when I still worked for Liam, I kept everything. Emails, Slack messages, commit history, the original prototype docs with my name plastered all over them. Old me had called it paranoid backup. New me called it Exhibit A through Z. The first twist in this whole saga happened 2 days after bathroom plunger epiphany. I was restocking mugs at the fancy espresso machine in the co-working kitchen when a kid with an overstuffed backpack and an intern unpaid badge shuffled in, mumbling to himself. "Okay, Derek," he whispered. "Don't cry at work. Cry at home like a professional." He poured himself enough coffee to power a small city and noticed me watching. "Big day?" I asked. He snorted. "We just found out the acquiring company wants a full audit of our codebase and IP before they sign anything. Liam is not calm." I almost dropped the mug. "Your startup's getting acquired?" I asked, feigning mild curiosity instead of gleeful hysteria. "Supposed to," Derek said, "but apparently there are, questions about who actually built what and whether Liam's as brilliant as his LinkedIn says. Don't tell anyone I said that." I like having rent. Your secret safe with the dishwasher lady, I said. He grimaced. You're not the dishwasher lady. You're the only person in this building who knows how to fix the printer properly. You're a hero. I blinked. Say that again. Slower. He laughed and left, but my brain had latched on to the important part. There were already questions about ownership. You know what questions love? Answers. That night, at my tiny kitchen table, I opened my paranoid backup folder and renamed it Operation Sparkling Justice. Step 1. Organize. I sorted everything by date, then by topic. Product concept, technical design, pitch deck drafts, random comments where Liam accidentally admits things in writing. It was so cathartic I put on a face mask and called it self-care. Step 2. Research. I looked up the corporation that wanted to acquire Liam's company. They had a whole shiny ethics and compliance page about not touching stolen IP with a 10-foot pole and respecting creators. Perfect. Step 3. Delivery system. I drafted an anonymous email to their acquisitions compliance address. Subject line, material concerns regarding Liam's company name's IP ownership. Then I paused, because anonymous tips look fake if they're too polished. So I took out a few commas, added one typo, and left off the period at the end. Authentic vibes. Inside, I attached a neatly curated zip file of documentation. Not everything, just enough to prove that Nora the janitor was actually Nora the original architect. Before I hit send, I added one more line, happy to provide further detail if needed. You might also want to talk to any former engineers whose exit was abrupt. Then I pressed send and ate 3 cookies out of sheer adrenaline. The second twist came faster than I expected. 2 days later, Derek caught me in the hallway, looking like someone had told him their dog was also their landlord. Hey, Nora," he whispered. "The acquiring company sent in some, serious-looking people today. Suits, laptops, no smiles." "Consultants?" I asked. "Worse," he said. "Lawyers." "Oh." He glanced around, then leaned closer. "They're asking for names of people who worked on our original prototype. Liam told them it was mostly him, and that junior staff assisted. But one of the lawyers asked, 'Do you have documentation of that?' And Liam did this little laugh I think only villains do in movies. I said non-committally, heart doing cartwheels. "Rough." "He's been stomping around for an hour," Derek said. "If the deal falls through, he's going to blame someone. I'm trying to look very invisible." "Here," I said, handing him a fresh coffee I absolutely did not charge him for. "Caffeine is invisibility fuel." He smiled, and I felt a tiny flicker of guilt. I liked Derek. I did not like using Derek as my source of corporate gossip. But then I remembered getting escorted out of the office with a cardboard box while Liam told everyone I'd chosen a different path. Nope. Guilt cancelled. The third twist hit from a direction I did not see coming. Instagram. I was on my lunch break, scrolling, when a video popped up in my recommended feed. "My fiancé's startup might be built on a lie. Story time." The girl in the video was all glossy hair and sharp eyeliner, filming from a pristine white kitchen. The text overlay said, "When your fiancé's big acquisition suddenly gets paused." She started talking about her fiancé, a brilliant founder named, wait for it, Liam. She described how secretive he'd been about the early days of the company, how he always changed the subject when she asked who helped him get started. "So I did what any sane, mildly suspicious woman would do," she said, sipping iced coffee. "I stalked the internet, and I found this anonymous blog." She held up her phone to the camera, showing a blog I recognized instantly, because I had written it. Months ago, after I got fired, I'd started a little anonymous blog called Start Downs, where I wrote thinly veiled stories about startup disasters. It had like 12 readers. I'd mostly used it as therapy. Apparently, it had leveled up. The post she showed on screen was one of my early rants. The case of the stolen prototype. I'd changed names and details, but the emotional core was there. Woman builds product, boss takes credit, fires her. I'd added a fake bit about a dramatic plant-throwing incident because it made the story funnier. Now Liam's fiancée was going through it line by line. "I thought this couldn't possibly be about him," she said, until I hit the part where the founder uses the phrase cultural misalignment. That's his favorite way of saying fired. She went quiet for a second, chewing her lip. "So, anyway," she said finally, "I've contacted a lawyer, and I'm not signing anything until I know exactly who built what and who owns what. And if some woman out there is getting steamrolled so my future kitchen renovation can happen, I'm not okay with that." She winked at the camera. "And if you're that woman, call me." The video ended. My phone buzzed with a notification. The blog had 100 new followers, then 1,000, then 10,000. My tiny anonymous therapy project had just become Exhibit Hakiai. By the time the acquiring company requested a clarifying conversation with all key early technical contributors, I had 3 lawyers in my inbox, 2 podcast interview requests, and a DM from Liam's fiancée. Her name was Tessa. She was even sharper over text than in her video. Tessa. If this is the Nora I think it is, I just want you to know I am firmly on Team U. Me. Depends. Are you currently engaged to a man who uses the phrase culture fit like a sword? Tessa. Unfortunately, yes. Me. Then yes, I am the Nora you're looking for. Tessa. Delightful. Let's ruin his whole week. Legally, of course. Reader. I adored her immediately. The clarifying conversation took place in a conference room that had more glass than walls. On one side of the table sat 2 lawyers and a compliance officer from the acquiring company. On the other side sat Liam, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Next to him sat Tessa, looking like she was about to watch her favorite drama. They'd invited me in my capacity as a former engineer. I'd worn my nicest blazer and my co-working polo under it out of pure, spicy pettiness. "Thank you for joining us, Miss Reyes," said one of the lawyers. "We want to understand your role in the early development of the product." Liam tried to jump in. "This really isn't necessary." The lawyer held up a hand. "We'll get to you, Mr. Hayes." I tried not to smile. I walked them through the timeline. My initial prototype. The pitch decks with my name on them. The Slack messages where Liam called the project Nora's baby. The day things shifted, and suddenly it was Liam's vision. Every time I referenced a document, one of the lawyers would pull out a printed copy I'd already sent anonymously. "We've verified the metadata on these files," the compliance officer said. "The timestamps match Ms. Reyes's account." Liam's face went the color of unripe tomatoes. "Look," he said, finally, laughing a little too loudly. "Founders always rely on early hires. That doesn't mean we don't own the final vision." "Of course," said the lawyer smoothly. "We're not disputing your role as founder. We're clarifying whether there are outstanding claims that could complicate the acquisition." She turned to me. "Ms. Reyes, have you considered filing an IP claim or taking legal action?" I took a breath. This was the moment. Plunger in bathroom Nora had become conference room Nora, and conference room Nora had options. I have considered it, I said, but I'm not really looking for a court battle. I just want the truth reflected accurately. In writing. Tessa glanced at me, then at Liam. Her eyes lit up like someone had just handed her popcorn. What would that look like? Specifically? The compliance officer asked. I'd like formal acknowledgement in the acquisition documents and any public-facing materials that I was the original architect of the product, I said. And I want retroactive equity based on that contribution. Liam laughed. She wants what? That's ridiculous. Tessa cleared her throat. Actually, she said, as Liam's fiancé and a future stakeholder in this company, I'd like to state that seems very reasonable. Also aligned with the acquiring company's values. Didn't you just publish an entire report about supporting creators? The compliance officer smiled slightly. We did, yes. The lawyer nodded. Mr. Hayes, given the documentation, this may be the path of least resistance. And, Tessa added, it's either that or a messy public story about a female developer being erased, which would not look great on the press tour for this acquisition. Or the wedding. She said, wedding, like it was a code word for negotiation leverage. Liam stared at her like he'd never seen her before. I sat back and watched him realize, in real time, that the woman he thought would nod sweetly and decorate their future house had just publicly sided with the janitor. With me. The deal they offered me wasn't fairy tale huge. I didn't end up owning half the company or buying a yacht named Cultural Misalignment. But I got a meaningful equity slice, a consulting contract, and my favorite part, a clause in the acquisition press release. This product was originally architected by software engineer Nora, whose early technical leadership played a critical role in the company's success. I read that line approximately 80 times. Tessa sent me a screenshot with a string of celebratory emojis. Then, a week later, she posted another video. This one was titled, "So I broke off my engagement, and I'm feeling great about it." I realized, she said, that if someone lies easily about the people who built his success, he'll probably lie easily about other things too, like where he is, or who he's texting, or why he forgot. We had dinner plans. In the background of the video, I could see a cardboard box labeled Liam's Things, Do Not Keep. I might have clapped. People keep asking me if I forgive him. The truth is, I don't think about forgiveness that much. What I think about is balance. I think about the kid in the unpaid intern badge who now has an acquisition on his resume and a better job somewhere that doesn't treat him like an accessory. I think about Tessa, who dodged a lifetime of explaining her husband's behavior at dinner parties. I think about the line in that press release and the way my grandma framed it and hung it on her wall like a trophy. And I think about the fact that the next time someone Googles Liam's name, mine shows up right next to it, permanently attached, not as his assistant or his drama, but as the person who actually built the thing that made him important in the first place. That's my revenge. No broken bones, no dramatic courtroom showdowns, just truth, documentation, and a very, very satisfying signature on a dotted line. Also, for the record, I quit the facilities job. I'm a developer again. First thing I built at my new company was an internal tool that automatically archives and backs up documentation with contributor names. The second thing I built was a tiny, silly app that plays a trumpet fanfare every time you successfully advocate for yourself. I called it Sparkling Justice. And yes, I use it a lot.